Hi, everyone. I am recording a video for our week 3 Not So Micro lecture, and hopefully you will find this helpful. I will try to run through it as quickly as possible, but there is a lot of information. So here we go. We're going to be talking about source inclusion, and this means all of the sources that you're using in your work, how to include them in text, and then we're going to talk about reference list citations as well. Okay, so I apologize that I may not sound great and coughing and sneezing during this video, but it is what it is. All right, APA style in-text citations. So everybody knows we should be using APA, so that's a really important factor. As Lisa mentioned last week, even if you're using some of these programs that bring in your citations supposedly in correct APA format, it is still important that you check them because oftentimes there's something in that program where it's not totally correct to APA, or in bringing them over into your work, something gets lost. So let's look at in-text citation. There are two main forms, really only two forms of in-text citation. Narrative, where you have the author and year of publication, and we're going to talk about a rule that applies to narrative citations in a minute. But the first time in a paragraph, this is how it would look. Smith et al., 2018 in parentheses, explain that stars are individual suns. Great. If you are using a parenthetical citation, you're going to have a sentence like this. Stars are individual suns, and then in your parentheses, Smith et al., comma, 2018. Remember, period after the all, then comma, and then the date, the year. All right, for additional in-text information, you can go to page 266. But as I mentioned, we are going to be talking a little bit more about the narrative ones in a minute. So if you have a direct quote in your work, these, I cannot stress enough, should really be used sparingly. In an assignment, the length of the literature reviews we're doing in this course, one, maybe two, in an entire dissertation, or let me rephrase it, an entire chapter 2 for a dissertation, I would say no more than 5 typically. So these definitely need to be kept to a minimum. You have to work on just paraphrasing the content and getting it out into your own words. All right, so if it's a direct quote, you have some options of how you can do this. And again, I'm not going to read every item on the page. I will provide the PowerPoint so you can walk through this on your own and read every word, but I want to hit the main highlights. So this is what it would look like. Smith et al., 2018, noted that. And then in parentheses, the earth is round, and then the page number. Now, it's important to note where the punctuation is. So you can see the quotation marks start here, they end after the quote, and then there's no end punctuation in this one because it's not needed the way this is cited. You just move to the parentheses. All right. And then you put the page number. If it is 2 pages, you do it how it's listed down here. Okay. Parenthetical, author, year of publication. So if you're not including the information in the narrative, you would have something that looks like this. The earth is round, and then in parentheses, Smith et al., comma, 2018, comma, page 391, and then your period to the sentence. Okay, you can find more information about this on pages 272 to 3 in the APA manual. All right, so I mentioned that we were going to get back to the year rule for narrative citations, and here it is. So this one is wonky. Again, I don't make the rules. I just have to make sure we're all following them. And this one is a little bit more difficult to catch in your work if you're not used to it. So include the year for the first narrative citation for a single source within a paragraph. All subsequent narrative citations for the same source within the same paragraph do not include the year. This rule resets for each paragraph. Parenthetical citations are different. They always include the year. So this may take your brain a few times to read through to really grasp it, but basically the first time you're using a narrative citation for a source in a paragraph, you do include the year in parentheses. Anytime you are referencing that source again in a narrative citation in that same paragraph, you do not need to include the year. Now, this gets tricky if you have, let's say you have Smith and Jones 2017, Smith and Jones 2006. In that case, you would be including the year, so you need to look at the APA manual on how to handle that. That is not very common. And if you run into that, I would suggest that you change one of them to parenthetical so it's less confusing. By the way, I don't think I mentioned this on the previous slide. You do not need both parenthetical and narrative citations in a sentence. So if you have a narrative citation, make sure you just include the year if applicable, but do not then also include the parenthetical citation at the end of the sentence. Okay, parenthetical citations with more than one source should list the sources in alphabetical order. Narrative citations are usually better in chronological order, although this has a little bit more flexibility. So what I am saying is if you have two sources, Smith and Jones, comma, 2018, Grabowski, comma, 2017. You do not change the order of Smith and Jones. You never change the order of authors' names on a source. That is all decided based on the team that's writing the article or anything. There's reasons, and you'll understand this if you're writing articles, but there are reasons for the order. So we never change the order of the authors' names on a single source. So Smith and Jones, you do not reverse to Jones and Smith. It stays Smith and Jones. However, your second source, Grabowski, begins with a B. Therefore, Grabowski 2017 would come in the parentheses before Smith and Jones. Make sure you're separating them with a semicolon. Look at the rules for this in APA. But this is something that as you're writing, you may not do naturally right now, and that's okay. But this is an easy visual check. You just go back and spot check all of your in-text citations and make sure that they are in alphabetical order if there's multiples in parentheses. Okay. Et al. Is plural. So make sure your wording that surrounds the source aligns with plural language. It's not, Smith et al. Is not singular. So you can see this example here. All right, narrative citations use the word and, A-N-D. Parenthetical citations use ampersand. So again, this is an easy visual check as you go through. You can just look for these after you're done if you're not used to this formatting. Okay. Secondary work citations. Always try to locate the primary source when possible, but when this is not possible, and let me just throw out a caveat here, when you get to your dissertation writing, it is extremely important that you do go and look for those primary sources. In a course, it's very difficult with the amount of time that we have, and you could end up going on a long wild goose chase to find the primary source. So I do not expect you to hunt it down unless it's an easy find. And most faculty won't, just be sure to, know if they do, but for classwork, they may make a note to you that you should look for the primary, but most faculty are usually okay with accepting a secondary for coursework. Okay. In the article you're reading by Jones, 2017, it says 23% of dogs have brown spots, and Smith is cited. So what do you do? Because remember, this is in the article you're reading. For an in-text citation, you could say something like this. There's a lot of ways you can word this, but this is one example. According to Smith, 2015, 23% of dogs have spots, as cited in Jones, 2017. So then, who do you cite in your reference list? You will cite the article or the source that you are physically or digitally reviewing. So if you did not find the Smith article, then you are citing the Jones article. And if you did find the Smith article, then you're changing that in text citation. But typically, if this is the way it is, you're only citing Jones, not Smith. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Transitional expressions. So this is less for week 3 and more for when you are writing your literature reviews. Transitional expressions can be used for the following reasons, but really what you're trying to do is connect the points so you don't have all these miscellaneous points from different sources just kind of thrown into a paragraph. So giving you an example here. These are some different examples of transitional phrasing that you can use and the way the language around it is written. So you can take a look at these. I won't read it for you, but you can see the transitional phrases are bold throughout the paragraph. All right, connected language is different than transitional language. Connective language is when you are trying to connect points from the same source without having the same parenthetical citation 3 lines in a row. So there are some ways to do this. Here's an example. So this entire paragraph is from the same source, but instead of using the parenthetical citations line after line, you can see I've used a narrative one here, and throughout I've used the connective language. Sorry about that, connective language. So I don't need in-text citations when I'm using appropriate connective language. I would still suggest that for the last sentence, you do cap it off with a parenthetical citation so that we know this is kind of the end, etc. You may not have instances where you have a full paragraph like this from one source because one source should not make up an entire section. However, some of you have reached out to me about this, and for this assignment, what you've presented to me, it's okay. But also, when you're writing your dissertation, you will have times like this. So now we're going to move on to an interactive example for the video here, even though you were not joining me. So if you have an opportunity to pull out either a piece of paper or pull up a Word document or email where you can type, that might be helpful for you. So referenceless citations can feel overwhelming. When you look at them, it looks like there's so many elements in there, and just trying to figure out, oh my gosh, which one is italicized and capitalized, and how does this work? So we're going to break it down. These are the only items that go into a referenceless citation or an article. We are focusing on an article, although I will tell you there's not a ton of difference, little things sometimes, but right now we're focusing on articles, which is what you should be finding for this course. So the elements of a referenceless citation include the author, the date, and in this format, but you're going to see in a minute, we're going to pull out source. So author, date, title, source, and then the UI or URL. So what does this look like? All right, source elements of a journal article, we're going to go through. Author's pretty self-explanatory. You can just double check that in the APA manual. Date is pretty easy. The title of the article, keep in mind, this should be in a sentence case, not each letter of the first letter of each word gets capitalized. This is sentence case, so keep that in mind there. But the most confusing element is typically the source. And how does this work? So let's take a look at it. All right, this is what it looks like just written out in this language. So your source title is italicized, and then a comma. Your volume number is italicized, and then the issue is not italicized. So from this parenthesis in, it is not italicized. You have your issue number, next parenthesis, comma, and page range. I understand this can still be overwhelming, but we're going to kind of keep walking through, and bear with me because I make mistakes on these sometimes too. So I'm trying to make sure I have everything presented clearly for you, and I believe I do. This is what a reference list citation should look like. So you have the left justification here and then the hanging indent. In Word, you can set a setting for your reference list that will do this for you. And there's some great YouTube videos you can find if you're not sure how to do it. Okay, so you can see for this source, there's a few authors listed out, and we use ampersand in the reference list citation as well. The date, and then the title of the article. Now notice here, because there's a colon, the next letter does get capitalized, even if this was a whole word or whatever. But it's only because it's after punctuation. So emotions and storybooks, the comparison storybooks, you can read this whole thing here. And then obviously proper nouns also need to be capitalized. So that it's sentence case. And then you can see the title of the journal is italicized, and each letter, I'm sorry, the first letter of each word is capitalized. Then you have your comma. So we just did source title. It's italicized and capitalized. When I said bear with me, I noticed that source, the title is not capitalized here, and for sake of not confusing, I should probably capitalize that T. So you can see the whole journal article is in caps, comma, and then you have your volume number is italicized, sitting right outside your not italicized issue number with a comma, space, and then your page range. Notice there's no space between the volume number and the issue parenthesis, and you do not need to include the P or Ps or page range in the reference list citation. Oops, sorry. And then you can see the DOI or URL. Previously, APA did not permit hyperlinks, but they are permitted. You just want to be cautious sometimes of the ones that are like, half a page long, but typically, you can get away with something this long and it can be a hyperlink. Okay, so I have in this PowerPoint, I have links for you to journal article references in the APA style guide. And also over here, this talks about DOIs and URLs if you'd like more information there. I did forget to mention one thing on an earlier slide. With a source that has multiple authors, in APA 7, this is a difference from previous manuals. You only include the first author's name at all from the very first citation. In previous editions of the APA manual, you needed to include the first three. No, I'm sorry. No. For sources with authors, 3 or more authors, you needed to include all authors in the first parenthetical citation. That is no longer the case. So please keep that in mind. If you have an article with 3 or more sources, you're always starting with et al. From the first citation. 2 authors, it's Grady and Moreno, if these were the 2, and 1 source obviously would just be Grady. Okay, so again, the main elements of the citation include these elements right here, these items. And so now this is where you can pull up your screen. We're going to try to walk through this together. We're going to look at what this is, and then I'm going to have you type out what you think the citation should be. Okay. So this is what a typical front page of an article might look like. And you can see on this page, everything you need for the reference citation is here. So let's take a look. So first, we need authors. These are the authors listed right here. Almost always, they are going to be listed where, you have a last name first in a citation, but in an article title front page, you're going to have the first names first. So you just have to flip it. All right, so that's your author. So right there, we have the 3 authors. Then we need a date, so we can see this is 2023. You may have to look in some different places, but you will find the information. Then the title. So notice here, it is in all caps, the first letters of each word, which we know we can't have. So you would want to, you don't want to just copy and paste this because it will show up incorrectly. So we have the title. And then next, we have the source. So this is the source for this article, the journal that it's in. Then we have a volume number right there. So the italicized, we would italicize this. Then an issue number. We have a page range. And we have a DOI. So I'd like you to take a minute to try to write out this citation or type it out and see if you can get all the components in the correct order and format. Okay, for sake of time, I am going to move on. You can always pause the video. I should have thought of that before I paused. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. And here is the cover page again. Here are the components that we need. So this is what it should look like. So you can see we have all the authors listed in the appropriate manner. The date in parentheses. The title, we've moved it to sentence case, and you can see this is capitalized there. We have the source title, the journal, in italics with each word capitalized, comma, italic, the comma is not, yes, I'm sorry, the comma, excuse me. The comma can be italicized, sorry about that. So this whole string right here is italicized. So the journal, the comma, and then the volume number. And then no space, but no italics into your issue number, comma, page range, and then the DOI. So see if you got this right, compare it to yours. Again, you can pause the video here. I'm going to keep moving. So we know that the APA manual is our best friend for this stuff. I've also given you some other references here for you to click on. So what are we doing for this week? In week 3, your literature review outlines and what should this entail? I'm going to show you some examples in just a moment. So you have, this is the process. I'm not going to walk through this for sake of time right now, but you can see the process here. And then lit reviews are a synthesis of multiple articles, cohesive and well aligned, and they are smooth. The writing flow is smooth. And then what are they not? A series of article reviews. So we're going to take a look at some examples right now. In the Not So Micro lecture block for this week, you will have some examples, and some are not perfect, but they are available for you to kind of look at. So, oops, sorry, I need to go to here. Okay. So here is a good review. Again, maybe not perfect, but this is a solid lit review, I'm sorry, not a review, an outline, the lit review outline. So you can see the person has their question, their RQ stated, and then they have their first title heading, which this is, we'll talk about levels in a minute, but this should be a level 1, and it is. What they did here was they put a secondary level on level 2, but in between there should be a blurb. You should never have what's called stacked titles. All right, so what they did from their annotation was they brought over various points for this particular section. They went through their annotation and determined what were the themes, etc., and how to section out the information. So it's one section, second section with points. Notice they brought in their citation in text, because this will help when trying to bring the points into the content. Now, this is not perfect, and part of the reason for that is, you can see all of these are the same source. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. But this is, what an outline could look like. This is a very lengthy one. You do not need to have one with this many sections and subsections. But if you have fewer main sections, then you're going to want to have more points included in those sections. All right, and then the references. So now let's take a look at how to convert that into a literature review. And again, this is not perfect, but this would be the week 4 assignment. I'm putting this in here now just in case anybody wants to get started. So you notice it says lit review introduction, which you don't even need the word introduction. You could just put literature review. And then they have a blurb or a nice solid paragraph here. It doesn't have to be that long, but they don't stack their titles. It's lit review and then an introduction. And in the introduction, they do have mostly the same source, but then they bring in another one down here. And again, because this assignment is pretty short in terms of a lit review, I don't expect there to be a ton of variation within each section, but do the best you can. All right, perception of fairness is a heading level 1. So it's a main heading and they provide the information here. And again, you can see that they have 1, 2, 3 different sources cited throughout, and they go back and forth. They don't just do all of Kim et al. And then all the next one and then all the next one. They've intertwined the sources to make the points for the section. Sometimes this works out better than other times, but this is typically what it would look like. And then there's a second paragraph to this section and another major heading. And again, the same kind of thing where they have the information cited with the different sources. When in doubt, always cite the information. When you progress through the program, you will start to see that your lit reviews, the writing in them, the content, almost every sentence, every other sentence is cited, because a lit review is your opportunity to tell the reader what you found in the literature. This isn't a time for you to opine your thoughts. It's a time for you to tell us what the literature said. And then you can see this section is pretty long. And this person did not do subsections, but it worked out fine. And again, they intertwined the different sources and then provided their reference list. Now, based on what we just went over, you'll notice that this is not the proper reference list citation format, because this should be left justified with hanging indents, but that's okay. The rest of the literature review is, again, not perfect, but a decent one to share with. So with that, I am going to end this video and hopefully get it posted soon so you can go through this. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.